Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Ignition Time. I have some very interesting news to share with you. I have a question for you before I jump right in. Did the states lose hundreds of billions of dollars? Was it a grim financial picture? Was it a financial rout for the states when the pandemic hit? Was 2020 absolutely terrible? And did states go upside down and did they lose hundreds of billions of dollars? The short answer to that question is no. In fact, some states made more money in 2020 relative to 2019. In a pretty mind-blowing article that was published by the New York Times, you'll see this headline on your screen. The pandemic did not bring the financial rout that many states feared. Grim forecasts did hold up for a few states. In other words, there were a few states that did indeed lose money, but many took in as much tax revenue as they did prior to the pandemic. Some states took in a lot more money than they did prior to the pandemic. Now, before I dig deeper into the video, you're probably wondering, what? How is this possible? The big reason that people continued to keep spending, even though they didn't spend money in person at restaurants and other in-person locations, people did spend money online. The big reason was the $600 a week federal booster that was instituted as a direct result of the CARES Act. I will be showing you some graphs which will give you a pretty incredible idea of how states have continued to make money in 2020 despite 2019. And towards the end, I'll tell you why this has significant political implications for the current $1.9 trillion stimulus package. I believe we are about to see a major battle on the floor of the United States Senate because the Democrats want $350 billion, the Republicans want zero, and the data I'm about to give you is going to validate the argument of the Republicans who say that this should not be a slush fund for poorly run democratic states. Believe it or not, let's just jump right in. Now let's take a look at how different states did throughout the country. Now you'll see the color on the left side, that orange color essentially represent states that lost money, and the states on the right side, the ones in the blue color, represent states that actually made more money in 2020 relative to 2019. You'll see that California made more money, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, Idaho, Washington, they did just fine. But there were some states that didn't do so well. Oregon was down 10.5%. Nevada, it's not like we're going to Vegas and gambling and staying at a hotel anytime soon or watching shows anytime soon. Nevada was down 11.8%. North Dakota was down 14.8%. Texas was down 10.4%. And Florida was down a whopping 11.3%. So you can start to see as you see this map, if you will, of the entire country, you'll start to see that some states, again, the states in blue are states that are doing well. And then when you see the positive numbers, so for example, let's take a look at Alabama. Alabama's at plus 3.7%. So Alabama tax revenues in 2020 were 3.7% higher than 2019. But then on the other hand, let's take a look at Texas again. Texas tax revenues in 2020 were minus 10.4%. In other words, they went down 10.4% relative to 2019. So again, looking at this chart, you'll see that the impact of the pandemic on state tax revenues differed throughout the country. Some states did lose money, but for the most part, states were fairly even, plus or minus a few points. But some states actually made more money in 2020 relative to 2019, and one of those states is the state of California. Pretty incredible when you look at this data. According to reporting by the New York Times, by some measures, the states ended up collecting nearly as much revenue in 2020 as they did in 2019. A JP Morgan survey called 2020 virtually flat with 2019 based on the 47 states that report their tax revenues every month, with the exception of a few states like Alaska, Oregon, and Wyoming, who do not report their tax revenues every month. Now let's take a look at another chart, the state and local tax revenue in 2020. Now this represents year-over-year changes and 12-month moving averages. So just to make it simple, let's take a look at this chart on your screen right now, and you'll start to see when we start on the left side, that's essentially us comparing with 2019, and you can see as 2020 hit, what's super interesting is that the property taxes that the states collect have stayed relatively steady, which means even though we've had an eviction crisis, even though we've had issues with renters, we've had issues with landlords being able to pay their mortgages, Hey, everyone's paying their property taxes. That's been staying relatively steady. Now, let's take a look at state sales tax. That declined substantially in April and May, but then it bounced back up and it came back close to the average. You'll see the line in the middle that says 0. That is the average. That is the moving average compared to last year. So states were doing quite all right. They saw a big dip in March and April, specifically as far as state sales tax is concerned, total state tax is concerned, and state income tax also dipped, but then it went back up because of high income earners who not only did not lose their jobs, but in many cases temporarily were laid off and then came back to their jobs and are working from home. And so when they get paid, the state gets paid. So this is the interesting thing. Even though individuals in travel, leisure, entertainment, and hospitality have lost their jobs in many cases permanently, the rich, because they've had their jobs, the states now get paid and the states are doing just fine. Let's take a look at this chart again. State sales tax, state income tax bounced back to the normal. Property tax, no problem at all. States are continuing to collect money and they are slightly off from 2019, but they are not in a deep hole that we have been led to believe. Now, let's take a look at another chart and let's compare the hit, the damage, the impact to the state tax revenues as a direct result of the pandemic compared with the 2008 Great Recession. Let's show you this chart on your screen, change in state and local tax revenues. Let's take a look at what happened during the 2008 Great Recession. With the 2008 Great Recession, it took many years. I mean, let's take a look at the bottom. You'll see that represents years relative to the start of the recession. You can see with the 2008 Great Recession, it took about 7 years for the states to get back to normal revenues. This is just incredible if you think about it. But what happened with the pandemic? Right about a year and a half, they bounced back to normal. This tells you that even though the pandemic was horrific, we bounced back like that. But we compare that with the Great Recession, it took 7-8 years for the states to get back to full revenue. Now let me switch gears and show you the original chart, which shows you all the states across the country on your screen one more time. So what I mentioned earlier were national trends. I talked to you about trends that were specific to the entire country, but this chart is more important because this chart shows state-specific trends, regional trends. I want you to identify your state on this chart, and I want you to then know as an educated citizen that your state probably is collecting as much state tax revenue, or in some cases maybe even more state tax revenue than 2019. And keep in mind that when the state collects tax revenue, it's supposed to use this money to pay out unemployment benefits and further improve their own internal systems. And as you might expect, the House Minority Leader, the Republican House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, had this to say in his blog post on his website. He said, record highs. He said, but do states and local governments really need all the aid that the Democrats are asking for? $350 billion. He said, here's the truth about state and local funding that Democrats don't want you to know about. State and local government tax receipts have never been higher, ever. Recent federal data from St. Louis showed that the third quarter of 2020 had the highest state and local government tax receipts in American history, $1.94 trillion. Now, I'll provide you with the link to the web page, to the blog post on House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy's website. I'll also provide you with a link to the New York Times article with all the graphs and charts that you saw earlier in the video. And I want to know what you think in the comment section below. I want our viewers and subscribers to let me know, do we need $350 billion in aid for state and local governments? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Now, let's be clear. Some states pay more to the federal government relative to what they get from the federal government, but this video isn't about that. This video is asking a very simple question. Have we been lied to? Have we been misled about the big myth, which is that state and local governments need funding, when we take into consideration the fact that states have been collecting money for the most part and doing just fine? Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I appreciate you watching. Please click the like button. Please subscribe. I would really appreciate that. That really helps out the YouTube algorithm. Take a look at a map of the country right here on your screen. I can tell you that everybody all over the country is clicking the like button. We have red states and blue states. Everyone's clicking the like button because they know it helps the YouTube algorithm for the Ignition Time channel. Thank you so much for watching. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode of Ignition Time. Take care. Bye.